Hey, what up? This is Rhea here. Rhea motherfuck back again with another video. Thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate all of you. And let's get into it. So let's talk about the music industry for a second. And we're going to talk about Drake. And the reason I'm talking about this is not in a gossip way or anything like that, in a way that we can actually learn that astrology is being used whether you realize it or not. Most people, the majority of the world, will never even come to the conclusion that astrology is being used or even think about it. It won't even be a thought in their minds. And that's why I kind of laugh when people say to me, you know, I don't believe in astrology, or I never saw the validity in it. Well, yeah, I can understand that you wouldn't, because this information is reserved for those who have either been in a secret society, not even Freemasonry, because you're going to have to be pretty high up for them to even start teaching you about things like this. So I wouldn't even count that. I would say, yeah, secret societies, either you're a studier of the occult on your own, but you have to have time as well to study the occult. And that's not something that everybody has as well, because you're going to go through all the books that are not real, and then we're gonna spend like a year doing that, and then you're going to go deeper and then realize what is real. It's also reserved for people who are making in the billion racket. That's why they say astrology isn't for millionaires, it's for billionaires. The quote by JP Morgan, I didn't quote that exactly, but you know what I'm saying. This is information about how the world actually works. So not many people really understand or have the level of consciousness to understand that. Now, that being said, you got to understand that this is being used all the time. Astrology is used to put out records so that the records come out successful. It's used to schedule anything. Presidents, Ronald Reagan would use an astrologer all the time. And I'm sure he's not the only one to schedule his meetings or his speeches so that they would go well. This is well documented, well known by astrologers, and he said that himself. There's also, everything is built based on astrology in your reality, all the buildings, everything that's done on purpose. I'm not even like, I could make a whole like podcast about that, but so I'm going to show you an example of how that's used in the music industry. Okay, most people don't even know this who are in the music industry. Okay, I was in the music industry and I was signed by Sony. I've worked with Grammy Award winning producers, everything, and I've seen a lot in the industry, and they're using the occult. One of my managers was a high-ranking Freemason in Alpha Phi Alpha, and if you know that, that's where Martin Luther King was. And I didn't know it at the time. I was in my early 20s. I'm in my 30s now, but at the time I had no idea. I was just trying to make it. Now, in hindsight, I know. So that's why I'm trying to spread this information so you guys know that there's a lot more going on that people don't even realize. So there's companies that use astrologers in order to decide if they're going to hire someone or not. They don't use your resume. And that may be kind of shocking to people, like not every company, but high-level companies. If they're going to hire someone and pay them millions of dollars a year, they don't have time to just, oh, is it going to work out? Because you could be a very good businessman, but if you're in the wrong period of time, or Mahadasha, which is what it's called, you could end up losing everything. It doesn't matter how good of a businessman you are. If you hit that part in your chart, then everything's going to go down. And it's the same with record companies. Like the biggest artists, say Drake, for example, they don't have time to just bank on and hope he writes good music. That's why things are all written for him. That's why there's marketing companies. And then that's why they use astrologers to know the exact date to put it out. And I'm going to show you why this is very obvious when you are an astrologer. And you can look at the times. Now, there's always a release time, and his latest album that he just dropped, I don't even know what it's called. Like, I don't even listen to hip hop no more or anything, because once you learn about how music is made, you will never listen to it again because it's affecting you. But I don't know what it's called, but it just came out on June 17th at midnight, right? So they call these surprise albums. Now, there's no such thing as a surprise album. That's a surprise to the audience, but it's not a surprise to them. This is years in advance planning. They act like he just puts it out. That doesn't happen. He doesn't put it out. The record label puts it out, and then they have to have this record like at least a year in advance before they put it out. So there's no surprises here. So everything, I say that so that you understand, everything is very calculated. This is $1 million, maybe billion. Like he has billions of sales, but like over the time period that they're going to keep him in debt, which is something else that people don't talk about, he's probably going to amass billions of dollars for them and everything, because they get not just your record sales, but your likeliness and your image, which can go beyond your life. So yeah, that's another thing. Anyways, the industry is messed up, but that's why they can't just put this out of nowhere. So this is the chart. So they always have this date and they say, oh, at midnight it's releasing, almost like he's staying up and just going to put it out himself. That doesn't happen. So it was June 17th at midnight. So midnight is always when they usually do it. Okay, so the chart I have on the outside, for those who don't really know astrology but want to hear about this, the chart on the outside is the chart of the day that it happened. So it's like a snapshot in time at that midnight. That's what happened. This is where all the planets were. Okay. So if you went out and you looked, and I'm using Vedic astrology for everyone, this is not tropical and it's not Western. And the reason for that is it has been changed. It was changed back in the day. And I'm not going to get into that, but this is if you went outside right now and you looked, this is what you would see. So I'm doing everything what I visually see. And this is a practice. Vedic astrology goes back 5,000 years, maybe they say even 25,000 years. So this is not new age. Some people claim that the Western astrology is kind of new age, but it was changed by the Romans. They took the Vedic astrology and they changed it. Okay. Well, they changed it and they left out a lot of parts. So then the chart in the inside, that's Drake's birth chart. So that's the chart snapshot at the time he was born. And he was born October 24th, 1986. And then I put 12 p.m. because I don't know the exact time he was born. What we're using and the transits we're using, these things didn't move, won't be that much different. I'm not using, the only thing that would change during that day is the moon. So everything else would stay the same, and the moon would actually still stay in Gemini. It just would be at different degrees depending on when he was born. So we're just doing noon as just a general time. So if you look at this chart here, so that day and that at that time, that exact time, we have the moon in Capricorn, right? And so that's the first house, the ascendant of this time that's happening, right? So that means that the seventh house, the descendant, would be Cancer. We always look to see if something's well placed. Like if an astrologer is doing this, is making sure what time they're putting it out, which they are, this is what you would do. You look at who is the Lord of the first house, right? Because your first house, your seventh house, and your 10th house, you always want them to be well placed. Like if you're putting something out or you're starting a business or you're getting married or anything, you make a chart like this for that exact time, and it will tell you what's going to happen in that marriage. It's going to tell you if you break up. It's going to tell you when your business will end, if it will fail, if it will prosper, how long it'll prosper for. It will tell you all of that. So, okay, the Lord of the first house is Saturn. Now, Saturn is well placed in Aquarius, and this is how you know. This is how you can kind of see. It's right by the ascendant. So the first house Lord is well placed. Now, the Lord of the seventh house is the moon, and then that's in the first house. So that's well placed. The only thing that's in detriment is that it's in Capricorn, but because it's in the first house, it kind of makes up for it and having the first house well placed. Now, then you look at the 10th house. The 10th house is Libra. Libra is art. Libra is rapping. Some people could argue it's a little bit of Scorpio too, but Libra is the arts. And so you have K2 here. K2 is well placed in Libra. And it's conjunct Venus and it's conjunct Mercury. Mercury is rapping, it's singing, it's communicating, right? And then Venus is the Lord of Libra here. So it's well placed. So you have Venus conjunct Mercury and K2 in Veshika, which is the star of purpose, the power to achieve many things in life. That's the nakshatra right there, right? And then you also have over here, you have Mars conjunct his north node exactly here and in Pisces. And then you see Jupiter is well placed in Pisces. And then this is the fifth house of entertainment. could be of fame as well, being known. And that's what you want when you put out an album. Now, here you have the North Node. And when you have the North Node conjunct Mars, Mars is the action that it takes to go get something done. And then Rahu, who wants the best of everything. Rahu is having all the material successes. It's being known in the world, right? And there's amplification, the independence, the aggressiveness to achieve the goal, things like that. So that helps somebody achieve what they want to achieve in what they're doing, right? So all this is very important. And then right there, you have it in Pisces at the very end, right? Which is the star of wealth. It's the power to nourish and transform. And so you have the star of wealth right here in the 5th house. So that's like gaining wealth, gaining fame, going for those things that get you known, and then from using the arts, and the star of purpose. So these are good nakshatras to be having these things happen. So all of that combined. Oh yeah, and the other thing I noticed too, which was like the whole reason why I made this video, thought it was interesting as they chose right on the midheaven his natal Saturn. And the thing is, when you put Saturn on the midheaven, which you're not really supposed to do when you're electing a chart for an event, this was the only thing that wasn't ideal. So I think they just did it anyways, and then they thought these other aspects will kind of reel it in, because have Saturn on the midheaven is your reputation, it's your job. So then that would be the reputation of what you're putting out right now, which would be the album, right? And how it's received by the public. And then you have Saturn here delaying, restricting things. So it restricts things. So when the album came out, people didn't like it. That they were saying he fell off. They weren't sure. And then that's exactly what Saturn would do. And I thought that was so crazy. But then days later, some people are starting to like it. So I think what you're going to see is that Saturn is going to delay the response, the good response from it, because it's right on the midheaven, which is not a good thing to do. But I don't know why they did that. Saturn's a slow moving planet, so delay it for a little bit. But I think people will like it after a while, that like later on they'll be like, yeah, it was a good album. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I just wanted people to see that. That's the reason why everything you do, and if you're an artist, that you really should consult an astrologer about when you should put that out, or learn astrology yourself and figure out when you should put out your album, because it's really crucial to the success. And see how it delayed it, and delayed people's response, restricted their response. It was the first album that people didn't really feel as well as his other albums, and I believe that's because the Saturn is there. And it was interesting because the Saturn is in the nakshatra Anuradha, which is the star of success. So yes, they wanted to have the Lord of the 1st house right on the midheaven. That makes sense, because that's the Lord of the 1st house. Any other circumstance, the Saturn would restrict it, but because it's the Lord of the 1st house, it's not. And so it's in that nakshatra of success, so it makes sense. I mean, technically it's not supposed to restrict it, but it seems like it did. And that's why you don't use Capricorn as the ascendant when you're making an electional chart, because Saturn is the Lord. And that's always the potential you're going to get, is by restricting yourself unintentionally, or restricting yourself to the public unintentionally. And now we can see why that happened. Well, lessons learned. Yeah, anyways, that's my video. I love y'all, and re-up, motherfucker. All right, easy.